So, welcome to the live coding session on having a Yocto in your browser. And I'm gonna jump over to another screen share or window share, which hopefully works. So, are you all seeing my browser window right now? Somebody say yes or no?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, and it's hopefully scaled in a way that you can see it or read it. What is written on the screen?
Yes, I can read it.
Okay. Okay. So let's go. You can see this is a browser. You can see it looks like VS Code, and you can see there is a terminal at the bottom. And as we good Yocto developers know, if there is a terminal, we type stuff in there. And for example, I will type DevTool build image in there. And what's going on? This is your browser, and it runs off. DevTool does stuff. Bitbake comes up, it builds an image. Now, you might say this is just like running VS Code somewhere with a backend over the remote extensions, but actually it is not. This is not on my machine. This is somewhere in the cloud, obviously, as I'm not kidding you. This is in my browser. And what did I want to say? I have actually tried it, and Jeff has too. We have both built software on iPads already. I don't like it that much. How about you?
iPad suits me well for most of the things that I'm doing. So a couple of things to point out here. So we're right now doing software development in Gitpod. So I work at Gitpod. Gitpod is a open source program, and you can run it on your own premise, or you can actually run it as a SaaS offering. So what we're doing right now is actually we've got a terminal emulator running that's actually running in a Kubernetes pod. So the interface for working with Gitpod is give us a Dockerfile, and it will run that Dockerfile in the cloud. And from that point forward, you can put anything in a Dockerfile. And Josef, what have you put in what do you put in this Dockerfile?
In this Dockerfile, I basically put a lot of stuff, which is pulled out of various places, namely from the Yocto Quick Start Guide, from an ESDK, from some examples that you will see real soon. As you noticed, the build is finished. And what do we usually do when we have a finished build? We say run QEMU, no graphic. And as we're in a Docker and not on a real machine, we avoid TONTAP as usual. We go for slurp, and you can see stuff is booting. We are getting we don't want that one right now. We are actually booting QEMU, including network connectivity to our development host. Again, all accessible through our browser. And to make it even cooler, this time we're not going with the classics like QEMU x86 or QEMU ARM. We're being the cool kids today. We're going for RISC-V 64 bits. I mean, this is basically the bleeding edge of cool what we're doing here. In our browser, this is what we are effectively like showing you. You can do Linux development all the way from the SPI over the kernel to the usernet in your browser. And I'm not only booting it, let's do more cool stuff. This is running here. I need another, sorry. Kurzen Vortrag, halbe Stunde noch. The microphone sync has switched, Josef.
No. Back.
No?
Much better. Yep.
Am I back here? Okay, I'm back. So dev-tool, I do have examples here, like libanswer, which is one of my classics. Dev-tool, build libanswer. Hopefully this works because I already did dev-tool add earlier in order to spare you the compilation times. What I want to show you is once it's built, I can do the classic again. DevTool, deploy target over slurp into the image. Hopefully this works. As I said, hopefully the demo gods don't fail me. DevTool, deploy target SCP like that. Libanswer root at localhost. I know this is kind of like a little bit of magic, and it will go into the README real soon. And it's there. It said deployed, compiled. Let's look at QMO. I can ask, and the answer is 42. I kind of knew that. And in order to see that I'm not like tricking you, let's change it. Like 911 is another awesome answer. No, I don't want that. DevTool build lib answer and build again, deploy. I'm just having a cup of tea because it's getting really cold here. Winter is coming, and I'm kind of like freezing. It's better for you, right? Down there?
Yeah, it's fine. I've woken up about 30 minutes ago, so I'm fully up and awake. Probably going to be up for a couple of hours. Weather is lovely. There's a beautiful heated lamp above my head. So what is going on here is essentially Gitpod as of, we only just announced this yesterday, actually. We've moved off GCP GKE, and we're now running our own K3S clusters, running off x86, and we've just moved across there. So actually, this is interesting. Yosef, you might not have realized we now have VTD, VTX acceleration. So this is even going even faster.
Okay, so you see, now I did the full compile, deploy, run cycle. So first proof, you can kind of like actually develop and try your software that you run through the Yocto build again in the browser. Let's do another crazy thing because, I mean, userland is easy. Everybody builds userland, right? Let's do another thing. DevTool, deploy target SC P root at localhost again. MP stands for mod presidium. This one comes out of a demo I did a couple of months ago. It was on kernel modules, and I just wanted to spare myself typing presidium like 100 times in this presentation, so I just shortened the recipe name to MP, and it should also hopefully like run, build, deploy. And of course, I broke something. DevTool deploy target as like I said, it's the demo gods. I made almost 15 minutes without breaking something. That's awesome. Deploy target SC P root at local host again. Give it another try.
So while we're iterating here and finding the right syntax, a couple of things to point out here is if you essentially, what we're talking about here is you're able to do software development from anywhere, like just by sharing a link. So software development has been automated to the point where you can just send like the equivalent of like a Google Docs link to someone, and they can just jump in and start doing software development. And why that is powerful is like, you think about the topics of open source communities. Like if you want to review a pull request, because there's a pull request that's been open, it's just simple of just jumping on a link. So if you're using say GitHub, Bitbucket, or GitLab, like it natively integrates, and like you just like if you're wanting to review a day's pull requests, you just go opening Gitpod, opening Gitpod, opening Gitpod, and each one of your pull requests is essentially a new computer in each browser tab, and you're ready to go.
So we finally have loaded some heavy metal here, and I don't want to change another string for no good reason, but let's shut that that one down, because I think like pure terminals are kind of boring. And you know, a browser is usually a kind of a graphic thing, as far as I understand it. And I was like, why can't we be graphic too? Let's see what happens if we try to be graphic. Okay. Run QEMU, public BNC, slurp again. And I mean, how crazy is this?
So that's exactly it. So we get to the point where you're working on, say, some bugs, or you're working on some feature requests. It comes down to give me the link that reproduces this bug, right? And all this stuff is all happening in your browser. And now to be clear, because it's happening in your browser, it's all sandboxed. So there's no risk of hosing your computer because someone's done something dodgy from a supply chain point of view. And it's also, well, you just click a link and it just works. Like you could be on an iPad, or you could be on a Chromebook, you could be in whatever. So we find a lot of people using this, especially in training scenarios. Like you want to run a workshop, and instead of running around with that USB stick, you just click like, here's the link, and people can just start learning.
So, as we all saw, this is really QEMU X11 with Splash and all the bells and whistles running right in that small browser window. And as promised, now here comes the rest of the slides, where I actually gonna be like, okay, how did I do that? And let's find this. Do you get my slides back?
Yep, we see slides. So
okay,
a quick question
demo
before we roll. So what's actually happening here is so Gitpod, we create well, the pods are actually Kubernetes pods, right? So when you connect into a workspace, we assign you a Kubernetes pod. We call them a workspace. We clone down the Git repository, and then we overlay something like VS Code. There's also options for JetBrains. We're working with the Emacs LSP team, so it doesn't need to be VS Code. The main thing is it's an execution environment to run anything in a Dockerfile. And once you've done that, you can do anything, including Doom. Maybe if we have time, we can finish with that one.
So, why is that clicking so fast? That was not what I meant. Back. So again, this is the demo session we've just went through, and just as Jeff put it, this link is essentially everything you need to get into the environment that I have just shown you. It might take some time to load because the containers are pretty huge, and I will show you in a second why that is. You can also click that link for no good reason. So what happens here? it's essentially like a couple of stages building one upon the other. At first, I built something called my Yocto dev container, which is just what the Yocto quick start says, and it installs all the necessary packages one needs to do Yocto development. There's little magic in there. Feel free to click the link. It's essentially just a Dockerfile and which installs a lot of packages and sets up a user. Having that container, I go into the next build stage where I build an ESDK using that one container. Those ESDKs are built for all the architectures I want to support, and technically I could have all of them. In my case, I went for John. Be reassured, I did the initial testing on QEMU ARM, and then I went for QEMU RISC, but it all works. Once I have that, the ESDK and the container are bundled up again into a new image. And that image then is used in VS Code in the browser and a lot of fancy by, as Jeff said it, by Gitpod IO. And again, I just run everything on Gitpod, as it says. And then I was even faster because I didn't fail anywhere, which is kind of crazy. Now, I think it's time to discuss some ins and outs and a lot of questions and things that have appeared. Let me look at the chat. Will the slides be updated? Yes, they will be updated, uploaded. Intros would be nice. Some of us know the jester. Yeah, well, I am the jester. I have introduced myself. John says, "Boo." Yeah, that's okay.
Could you drop the link to before so people can start their own workspaces into the chat,
sure.
please?
In the chat?
Yeah. So
sure,
VNC isn't an extension to VS Code. It's what we're actually doing is we've actually put the X11 VNC binaries in a Docker container. We're running X11 VNC binaries in the background. The X11 VNC binaries start a server. And once you have a server, then you just need a VNC client. So the VNC client we're using is your HTML5 VNC player. So it's just composing all these primitives on top of each other. It's got nothing to do with VS Code. We do use VS Code itself is released under MIT, but Gitpod found it wasn't really open enough. So we opened it up and called Open VS Code. And that's what we're using. So when you clone a workspace, you get given a Kubernetes pod. Kubernetes pod then gets a Git repository. Now that it's got a Git repository, you need some sort of editor. By default, it's VS Code, but it can be anything. We'd love to switch that out. And we are. There's things coming towards Christmas where you can select JetBrains IDEs and other experiences. So you can just even ditch VS Code altogether. And from that forward, it's a cloud operating system in the browser. Everything that you would expect to work from a Unix point of view works. And yeah, so that's how we're doing the VNC well, it's just a HTML browser. So HTML5 VNC client connecting to a standard VNC port and then serving that out. So got a question here is like how to DOS that container. If we get time, we do have a very interesting repository called sudo rm-rf, which does exactly what you think it does. It deletes everything in the container when you start it up. It's quite boring, but it's quite fun because it's a safe way to run that command that everyone knows that it should run. Over to yourself, Josef.
I think you already answered all the crazy stuff because VNC was one of the main questions. The link is dropped in there. I had one over there. The example application runs in DevTool. Container recipe. Yeah, it's the main problem is that a full build is a bit too big for the standard configuration, and I didn't want to make any dirty tricks that you couldn't reproduce. So the link that you get is really working with DevTool and then ESDK. Technically, you could have a full build and everything once you're self-hosting and giving your machines enough persistent memory, I would say. And the rest of the questions actually go to Jeff from Bien. How long it would take for a classic build on or a raw build on the new K8s cluster, and the other one, how much resources one of the pods usually has. Well, I guess the build time is hard to guess because you know, we all know that there are builds that take an hour and builds that take like 10 hours. So good question.
Depends on also the SS cache population and what builds already happened and what's dirty and what the cache hits and misses are.
Yep. And sharing is complicated, John, because you don't have a common NFS or something. So I've been working on that, but it doesn't really fly yet. So that would really be something that one would do if being self-hosting and having the environment under much tighter control.
All right, so I've got a question here from Paul. How much disk space, CPU, and RAM do the pods get? So that really depends whether you're running it yourself. So if you want, Gitpod is open source, open core. We have specific things that we do for open source projects. We generate things in our BOM materials, and we financially support the open source projects that are in our product. But if like an open source project wanted to use Gitpod, like i.e. IDE.Yocto project or IDE.Rustlang, like we will generate you licenses so you can actually run this all yourself. And then from that point forward, you can run any CPU, disk, RAM combination you want. It's about having resources. So like companies like FossHost will provide resources for you to actually self-host Gitpod, and Gitpod will happily provide the licenses. So under the SaaS offering, currently the amount of disk space, RAM, and CPU is fixed, but we're looking at making some changes there to allow configurations to the actual sizes of CPU RAM. So next up, we've got a question from John. So the question is shared SS state between the pods. So the typical software development flow with Gitpod is, if you think about a Git branch, every Git branch you've got is a new workspace, and a new workspace is a new browser tab. And so sharing state between them, each one of those workspaces and each one of those browser tabs is essentially a new Kubernetes pod. There's no real way to share SS state between the pods as such. Because they're sandbox, like we provide no primitives for mounting a shared file system between it, but it's not like something we couldn't do. Right now, the approaches for sharing state between pods would be, you'd go for some sort of fuse overlay mount if you needed to, or you would just go, well, it's in the Google data center, it doesn't matter about my local network connectivity, I'm just going to smash the network link. Like there are many different ways about it. But if you wanted to share a mutable storage between pods, I would go with some sort of fuse overlay. But in the future, it'd be kind of cool to have some sort of shared like NFS mount between all the pods.
I've just answered the question on downloading right in the browser. The question is, how would one download stuff from such a build? Well, find it on the left in the file browser, right click, then select download, and it just works. And Bian asks if it's possible to use web USB from the pod back to a local target. I think that's something that the Goliath folks already are doing or not. I think it's possible, but in the experimental stage.
It's still very early stage. We're still waiting for standardization. We're still waiting for standardization on web USB standard and browsers to add support. But the Goliath folks, they're doing IoT work and they're really pushing the envelope. So go check out what the Goliath IoT folks are doing there. Supporting web USB and all those type of workflows is very important to us. And it's coming. There's so many new entrants into this space right now. It's not just Gitpod. There's GitHub has an offering. JetBrains just announced an offering last night. It's software development is moving to the cloud, where you're essentially using a thin client. I'm normally traveling around Australia in the middle of the forest, and I'll be on a dodgy network connection, and I'll just be on an iPad or thin client. And well, it doesn't matter because my software development environment is a beef machine somewhere in a data center. And that's kind of where the world might be heading.
So, somebody has to tell John that it's not Go based. That's what he requested.
So, yes, I will answer that question and say Gitpod is a combination of many technologies, including K3S, a large amount of YAML, Golang, and also TypeScript.
Okay.
And in the future, maybe a programming language that's based on S expressions, but I can't say much more for now.
So I think we've got all the buzzwords covered and hooked a couple of folks on doing the builds in the browser right now. I hear somebody's hurry is just ordering recipes. And another one for you, Jeff.
Sure. Limitations when. Oh, sorry. The question is, what are the limitations when running self-hosted with the FOSS version? One, you have to run it and maintain it yourself. Like it's on-prem infrastructure. We will generate you a full license for usage with your open source project. If you're running your own infrastructure, that means you have to maintain it, but there are no real limitations as such. Like, I don't know if anyone's done it yet. We just haven't had time, but like if you have your own on-prem infrastructure, essentially, theoretically, you should be able to pass the GPU through, right? Like Kubernetes and K3S does support a GPU-based resource. There are people playing around with doing Android software development in the browser. So like instead of having to go through the entire boot chain setup for Android, which is equally as hard as doing anything in the industry, the dev tool setup, you just like click a link and it works. So there's no real limitations apart from that you have to run and maintain your own infrastructure.
So, how many source does a software developer need?
That's an interesting question. I suppose that is a question for me. This saw is probably, I don't know, 60 years old. I have a lot of saws. I have a lot of unicycles. This mallet is definitely 65 years old. I put that nail in there when I was, I think I was like 7. So the real answer to this question is you can never have too many saws, especially if you're running your own on-prem infrastructure. So Jasper, you have a question about limited users. Yeah, that's in the scenario if you're running it yourself without coming and speaking with me and saying, hey, I want to run this for my open source project. If you're looking at running this for an open source project, we'll make all the limitations disappear. We'll generate you and the project a license. But if you're running it like on-prem yourself, yeah, there's limitation of 10 users and features start degrading. Typical open core, but kind of like come speak with me. Like, well, what are you doing? What do you want to do? Gitpod.io/chat, and you'll find the team hanging out over there. I'll drop that link down there. If we've still got time.
Technically, I think we have time because we're just eating up the break that appeared when another presenter pulled out. That's why we shift forward a little bit, and I invited you to join me, so we can like talk more.
Let's have some fun. Let's have some fun. Could you please? I'd love to speak with anyone. I'm really accessible on Twitter. Just send me a DM, or so I'm at Jeffrey Huntley, also known as the NFTbay.org. Pretty easy to find. The Discord community is gitpod.io/chat. Could you potentially share a web browser and head to github/gitpod-io?
I can try to. Let me check. So
there we go. GitHub.
What did you get?
.com/gitpod-io /doom.
Oh, come on. You want me to
and then scroll
this
down.
link, right?
Oh, totally. You click the link because like we need to play Doom. We need to play Doom in the web browser. WASI Doom in the web browser. And while that boots, we could probably, I don't know, sudo rms rf and delete a workspace a couple of times for fun. So right now that is downloading and compiling everything to do with Doom, the WASI build. It's really interesting because it's not like the first generation of these web-based software development environments. They're like code sandboxes. This is not code sandboxes. This is a cloud operating system in the browser tab. But it doesn't have to be just the browser tab, but we actually have extensions where you can we're working on where you can SSH into the box. So you got SSH and Mosh. So you got Thin Client here, remote development over there. There's an extension that exists right now that does VS Code remote. And myself, I'm looking at bringing in a application for an iPad. So we want to hide some of the things of being in a web browser tab and just make it how you want it to be. It's all about thin client, thick client. I love my thin client for hipsters. That's what an iPad is. It's a thin client for hipsters. It's interesting to see the industry go back in circles again. It's another cycle.
I have to point out something. The original Doom was on one floppy disk. And this was certainly way more data involved.
Yes, that's an interesting point. So right now, the tool chain for WASM is probably a multiplier bigger than the tool chain, the actual Doom itself. I don't know what that says about the software, but that says about the software industry. But it's now possible to play Doom in the web browser on an iPad, and then also do a dev loop and customize everything about it. So currently, we're waiting a little bit for this to start up. So Gitpod has a feature that will pre-build the environment, kind of like CI/CD. So we will actually do the build step or the restore step. So you just click the link and it just works. I actually
used that one in order to pre-populate the example code, because those are, I can show you, those are actually Git submodules that refer to other example projects by mine. And I used the pre-build in order to get that stuff into the build in a non-intrusive way.
And what you're seeing right now is the result of me not doing that in this particular project. So we actually have to wait for the installation of dependencies. But the good news is the installation steps are all automated. So this is where I think these types of tools are going to be amazing for open source, because instead of having a big, thick contributing.md, what you have is all the steps needed to build a developer environment is essentially now a Docker file. And now it's a Docker file. You can like run that Docker file locally and then like Emacs into your environment on your local computer and you start hacking away, or you can run that Docker file in the cloud on Gitpod. Like it really doesn't matter. The main thing is getting rid of that big contributing documentation. And from there, it just works. Actually, do you want to do Emacs? Let's do it. Someone just mentioned Emacs. We've got time. Could you please Google for Gitpod space Emacs LSP? Let's do Emacs with Broadway. Gitpod Emacs LSP.
Gitpod Emacs
LSP.
Let's do that one, and then
second link.
I think I got a second link. Sorry. Second link. Why
search result? Because it goes straight to the GitHub issue, which has handy launching links. Scroll all the way to the bottom. Go up a little bit more. That one on the 23rd.
Doom is still dooming.
Doom is building and zooming. So hopefully you have enough time to actually see this go through. That's yourself. Let's actually go back and let's not use Yocto. Actually, no, that's the correct one. This is actually, because there were just standard Unix primitives here, and like we're forwarding network ports, as you expect on a local computer, but in the cloud. This is actually going to set up Emacs with GTK Broadway. And the end result is you've got Emacs in the browser. So what the Emacs LSP team have done is you click a link and it boots up Emacs running in your browser, and then you just throw away the tab for VS Code and ignore VS Code there.
Should everything be there? I just
it's building currently.
I think that was not that good an idea. Finally we broke something. Usually it's not a good show for me if I didn't break anything during it.
Well, that's one of the things. So when you build in the environment for the first time, it's not going to be cached on the individual nodes, right? And in this case, I haven't looked or loaded this in a while, and so there is no cache. So once there is a cache, it's stored in our registry Gitpod, and then all our individual Kubernetes nodes will pull from that cache. That's essentially what a pre-build is. So it's pulling from that cache right now. And Doom, I wonder if we've got time to do Doom, but we might be out of time.
Yeah, I think we shouldn't eat up other people's lunch break completely. How sad. I'd say I'll just drop the links in the chat again, and people can try all by themselves. Yeah, because I think we're going a bit too crazy here, and the web is punishing us for it.
I'm keen, because if it goes bad, I'm going to have to go back and look at Grafana and figure out what went wrong and go back and fix it. So punish me. Live demos are perfect, because if they don't work here, then it's...
No, that's going a bit too far, probably. Much better to run Doom on the browser.
Yeah, next demo we'll do Doom running on RISC-V. Yeah, we'll do some Inception and end with Doom.
Okay. Oh no, I'll kill Doom And that's another neat one. I just can kill off the workspace, and there will be like properly disposed in 14 days, I think. So I don't have to clean up behind myself. So, but this one should be open right now.
Yeah, just open the ports and click open.
Open private or what?
Yeah,
Oh,
there you go. There's Emacs
Oh my
running in
God.
a browser, completing its destiny as, or not as an operating system, but running in the cloud,
okay.
in a cloud-based operating system.
I think that those are the words that scared everybody the heck out of what we've been cooking up over summer. With that, let's get back to the presentation, which
We shall.
essentially is just like, thanks everybody for having us. Thanks, Jeff, for getting up in the mid of the night and doing crazy stuff with us. That's what I would say.
Thank you everyone
Yep.
for the opportunity for tuning in. Yes, they are unicycles hanging from the roof. In case you're wondering, yes, it is. And if you want to come chat about Gitpod and open source or like Gitpod and anything, gitpod.io/chat. I'm going to be hanging out there. We're happy to cut open source projects, a license, and also at the same time, we have a professional open source plan, and just DM me and I'll upgrade your plan. That's one of the things we identified a long time ago is if we provide open source maintainers with good tools, then it makes it easier to build stronger communities and people just be able to start contributing to the project. You just click a link and it just works. So thank you.
It just works.